Hello, saints and scholars. Welcome back to Theo Life, where today we will discuss the intense dichotomy of 1 John. One of the things you'll notice right off the bat with 1 John is it uses some very intense language.
We know that we have come to know him if we keep his commandments. Whosoever says, I know him, but does not keep his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in that person. Do not love the world, or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love for the Father is not in them.
This can be a little bit freaky when you're reading it as a Christian.
Okay, I do love God, and I'm trying really, really hard, but sometimes I sin, and nobody knows something I don't really love God. Okay, but I'm trying really hard right now.
The very intense, very harsh tone of 1 John kind of creates a split where you're either, super holy, telling the truth, rocking it for Jesus, or you were like a rotten, sinful, dark, evil pagan. This is very tough for us modern readers because, honestly, in modern terms, we really don't like extremes.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
As modernists, we don't tend to look at the world through the medium of good versus evil. As you can see, I love toys, and one of the fun things about toys is you've got good guys and you've got bad guys, and the good guys are always good and do the right thing, and the bad guys, they're always bad, and they've got evil motivations like, money or taking over the world, or they just hate those pesky kids. But the good news is, the good guys always win in the end. But in recent years, we've tended to interpret our idea of good and evil slightly more nuanced. Most people would say no one's completely a good guy, no one's completely a bad guy, and we both have good and evil within us.
The world isn't split into good people and Death Eaters. We've all got both light and dark inside of us. What matters is the part we choose to act on.
But John presents this world of extremes, of good and evil, and we have to ask, how do we interpret that? There are three theories we're going to examine today. Theory number one is John is speaking literally. John means exactly what he says. When you're a Christian, when you love God, you do not sin. You do not tell lies. You understand your theology well, and you live in perfect accordance with it. It may be possible to deceive yourself in being a Christian, but if you're going around, and sinning on occasion, or maybe not fully understanding your theology, you are wrong, you are deceived, you are a type of antichrist.
There are two kinds of people out there, the sheeps and the goats. Those rotten pagans going out there violating of God's creation every single day. And us, loyal, faithful saints here at the First Assembly of Fundamentalist Restoration Christian Church, where God's people truly obey his word.
Even though this dichotomy might make us feel a little bit uncomfortable, we still have to take it seriously. Is it possible to genuinely love God and still sin on occasion? What does it look like for a Christian to have no fellowship with darkness or not love the world at all? Even though these statements can make us uncomfortable, we do still have to grapple with them. Theory number two, John is using the rhetorical device of contrast. Since 1 John is a sermon, we're going to see a rhetorical device. There's a rhetorical device of contrast, where the author wants to emphasize the differences of two different sides. The speaker will do this by using diametrically opposing words to show that there are two very different camps. We see this language throughout the book of John. There's powerful dichotomies like love, hate, sin, righteousness, remain, leave, good, evil, Christ, antichrist. While human beings can sometimes be dualistic, God never is. God is extreme in his love, extreme in his holiness, and extreme in his righteousness. Now, to support this idea, we should remember that 1 John was written to Gnostics, and the Gnostics did believe that there was duality within God. They believed there was a God of the light and a God of darkness. They believed that Jesus was sort of the positive advocate, and there was an evil advocate, which they called sin. Many Gnostics were dualists at the same time, so John could be emphasizing that there is no duality in God in a way of counteracting Gnosticism. Maybe our lives don't always look like that, but God always does. Maybe you feel a bit of duality within yourself.
Sometimes we're tempted towards evil, but other times we're tempted towards good.
As human beings, we definitely feel that duality. Theory number three, John is not describing individual behaviors, but pointing to the movements or worldviews of two competing ideas. John could be creating an overgeneralized argument, which might teach that Christians love, whereas heretics hate. Christians believe in truth, whereas heretics turn to lies. Christians believe in righteousness, whereas heretics turn to sin. He would not be speaking of all individual Christians, but rather asking, which side are you on? The movement dedicated to truth and God, or the movement turning away from God to their own subjective feelings?
Which side are you on? Which side are you on, boys? Which side are you on?
As evidence of this belief, we can look to the verse where it says, it appears Christians do not sin. But yet in the very next verses 2 and 3, it talks about, but if a Christian does sin, here is what restoration looks like.
My dear children, I write this to you so that you will not sin. But if anyone does sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Jesus Christ, the righteous one. He is the atoning sacrifice for our sins, not only for ours, but for the sins of the whole world.
John was smart enough to know that you can't say Christians don't sin in verse 1, but then talk about what the restoration process looks like in 2 and 3. He might be emphasizing that as a movement, Christianity is dedicated to try and be righteous in all things, but then pointing out that sometimes individuals do not live up to that task, but we still move forward and dedicate ourselves to God. A very thorny and contentious issue. What's the answer? You decide. Let's finish today with a review.
The letter of 1 John creates a empowered dichotomy that has Christians always live lives of constant holiness. Today we examine 3 theories of interpretation. First, that John's dichotomy is literal and Christians should at no point be indulging in certain sinful mindsets or behaviors. Secondly, John is using a rhetorical device in order to create contrast. John uses particularly opposite terms in order to emphasize the difference between two sides, but not necessarily the individual behavior of the Christian. Third, John is not speaking about individual behaviors, but rather contrasting 2 worldviews, that of the Christian and that of the heretic, and that one worldview leads to holiness while the other one leads to sin. Thank you for joining us on Theolife. May God be with you.